Hello and welcome to today's video. So this was going to be my top 10 favourite movie tie-ins, but when I started going through these and then I started looking at some of the other publishers as well as my exclusive movie tie-ins bit of my collection, I realised that a top 10 would be absolutely impossible. So I've got 10 titles to show you today, but there will be next month I'm going to pull out another 10 which I believe are absolutely outstanding movie tie-in editions. So that's what we're going to be having a look at today. So sit back, relax, and let's take a look. Okay then, so in no particular order, we'll start with this one. So this isn't actually a movie tie-in or a movie adaptation. This is just a making of, and I file this one with my movie tie-ins because it's a look at the making of the first Jules movie, Edith Blake. Now this is American, it's a Ballantine edition. I don't think it ever had a UK printing, but this has got an import. It's got a 60p import sticker on, and this is a behind the scenes look at the making of Jaws. Now, as you can see, it's got absolutely loaded with pictures and books on Jules, particularly the first and second movies, are quite collectible these days, and I think this is one of the most collectible of all. You just don't see this around at all, so quite scarce this, and I would imagine, although I've not looked it up, I would imagine this goes for quite a pretty penny. But it's one of my favourites. I read it at the time. I had a few books on Jaws and I've always loved it. To this day, it remains one of my all-time favourite films. I just love it. So this one here, look, a 5th printing from October 75. I would have got this myself, probably second hand in about, I don't know, the early 80s. But it's one to keep your eyes out for. Any edition, including the just the movie cover of the book, is worth having because they are quite collectible. So yeah, a great book, that one, and one I would recommend. Next one we got is The Italian Job. What a great tie-in this one is. So this one's obviously got Michael Caine on the front there, a few stills on the back, got the classic mini there, Noel Coward. It's brilliant, isn't it? And this actually sort of has the cinema quad. This was like the movie poster, at least one of them. There was a few. Troy Kennedy Martin, Ken Walashini. I think Troy Kennedy Martin wrote the script, and then maybe this Ken guy, he may have put the book together. Now a Paramount picture. It's a beautiful one, this one. Really is quite iconic. Once again, quite scarce. There's no stills inside this one, but it's quite scarce and a collectible movie tie-in. Let's see when this one was published. First published in 1969 in Spirit and reprinted July 69. So this isn't the first, but I'll tell you what, it's the only copy I've ever come across. So without going online to look it up, I think that's probably quite a scarce one, that one. Now, I love all the James Bond books, but I only chose one out of my sort of top 20 favourite movie tie-ins, and it's the tie-in addition to my favourite Bond film, the George Lazenby one, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which I really like. I've always preferred it. It's always been my favourite Bond movie, and it's just great. I really like that. The blocks there with the girls around him. It was just such a great film, wasn't it? This one's got, as I recall, yeah, it's got that great inside photo there from the snow scene, and on the inside front cover it's got that little photo montage. This edition is the 6th printing from 1965, and yeah, there's a lot of nice Bond movie tie-ins. The Goldfinger one's particularly good as well, but I think out of all of them, if I had to choose just one, it would be the one for On Her Majesty's. It's just great, that one. Next one we're going to look at is the movie Bullitt. Now, Bullitt, if you recall, I've got a few things to show you on this one. So Bullitt is the movie starring Steve McQueen and Robert Vaughan's in it. And Bullitt, the movie, was based on this novel here. So this is I think it's the original, from Avon, Mute Witness by Robert Pike. So this is the first Avon printing from July 1966, but the book actually came out in 1963. The actual author's real name is Robert L. Fish, but rather than call himself a fish, he turned himself into a pike. So this was the original American printing before the movie came along, and obviously the movie did come along. It became a big hit for Steve McQueen. He's got that fantastic chase in and around San Francisco. So this was the American movie tie-in, and it's got McQueen on the front there with like half his face. Then on the back there, in action, Steve McQueen and Robert Vaughn. They're almost like co-stars. He's got a slightly bigger name than Robert Vaughn. But they were best friends. Robert Vaughn and Steve McQueen were next door neighbours. I remember speaking to Robert Vaughn about that, and he said they were really, really good mates. So that's the American tie-in. And then in Britain, it was published by Penguin, and they did it with that edition as the movie tie-in of the original book. Not quite as lavish, but it's just got the one photo of Steve McQueen holding the gun again. Different photo to the one on the back of the American edition. And I mentioned I met Robert Vaughn. I got, at the time, this is my Penguin edition of Bullitt, and I got Robert Vaughn to sign it. So that's actually Robert Vaughn's signature there, who is like the co-star of this film. So that's good. And then in the, I think it was the 90s or the early 2000s, Esquire magazine published a cover mount of Bullitt when it was having a bit of a revival. Maybe it had just come out on DVD. Bloomsbury Film Classics, the original novel. Special edition, free with Esquire magazine. And this one, when did this get published? 1997. Wow. So even this is 25 years old now. So yeah, Bullitt, one of my favourite McQueen movies. I really like him as an actor anyway, but Bullitt was one of my favourites, and a multitude of editions there to choose from. Next, another one, probably the oldest one, in fact definitely the oldest one we're going to see today, and that is the tie-in to Forbidden Planets. This is published by Corgi. This copy is quite, well, this book is very expensive to buy. It's about £100 for a really nice one. So my copy was a very low grade one that was falling to bits, and I did a bit of a repair job on it, which became a very successful video on my channel. It was literally in pieces. So this is like a patched up, plastered version of it. But here we are. So the book of the MGM CinemaScope film starring Walter Pidgeon and Anne Francis, and it is an absolute classic, isn't it? Well, Robbie the Robot there. Sadly, no pictures inside, but it is the book of the film. There's a really, really nice American one, which is still on my wants list, but I've not got that one yet. But here we are, and all the Corgi science fiction had these distinctive green spines. So it's one that, if you ever come across it in any condition, because even tatty ones tend to go for about £15 or so, it's definitely worth picking up. Okay, next we got another one of my all-time favourite movies, Get Carter. I'm a huge Michael Caine fan, and this one was one of my favourites of his by Ted Lewis. I'm really disappointed. I used to have an absolutely mint copy of this, and I just don't know what happened to it. So this is very much a fill-in copy until a better one comes along. Just that one's still on the back, but it's a great, great film, this one. And I've got a couple of others by the same author, Carter's, I think another Carter novel after this one. Let's see what printing this is. This is the third printing of it in pan. All of them are quite scarce. Really mint ones of these go for about £30 these days. And I have got what is also very, very scarce. It's the American printing of Get Carter. This, I think, is far, far scarcer than the British version. You hardly ever see this one for sale. I haven't seen a copy for sale on eBay UK this year, maybe even for a couple of years. I've not seen one. I've had this one for a long time. Popular Library edition from 1970. I've had this since the 80s, this one. But yeah, I'd love to get a better copy of Get Carter, but once again, the two as a pair just knock out and easily. Great film, and definitely a great movie tie-in edition. Next we've got another great film, all similar sort of periods, so getting a bit of a trend here, but this is the French Connection. And once again, I wouldn't mind a slightly better copy of this one. There's that classic scene, just going into the subway there. Robin Moore did the original novel, and what a great film this was, wasn't it? Popeye Doyle. Absolutely fantastic. Got that amazing chase through the streets of New York, which is just one of the best car chases ever. It's in the streets of New York. He jumps onto the New York subway as well. Just superb. I did also bring down, because they were literally sat next to each other, which was a French Connection 2, where they actually go to France and Popeye eventually tracks him down, but at the expense of being turned into a junkie at the same time. Really, really good stuff. That just two outstanding films, and worth watching back to back, because they almost follow each other straight on to make a really great 4.5 hour epic. Next we've got another, well, you can't really top The Godfather, and The Godfather movie was just, well, it was just brilliant, wasn't it? And The Godfather Part 2. This is the tie-in edition of it. It's got 32 pages of photos from one of the most talked about movies of our time, and they're dead right. So, it's the photo insert there. And this is a really nice copy, so I'm not going to bend it right back, but you get the idea. There's John Gazelle there. Absolutely great actor. Died far too young, didn't he? And plus the novel itself. It really is quite something, this one. Now, this printing is, well, it says copyright 1969, the Fawcett Crest edition. I think this might actually be the first movie copy of this one. I have had 2 or 3 through my hands, but this is by far the best condition one that I've ever had. And, well, it's good stuff. And I think, you know, if you get a chance to pick up one of these, it's worth grabbing, because these are over 50 years old now. There is another Godfather book that I wanted to draw your attention to whilst we were looking at The Godfather. It's this one. So this is autobiographical. It's by the same author, Mario Puzo. And basically, this tells the story, because I had no idea about this side of him, how, obviously, prior to The Godfather, he was a struggling author. He couldn't really make ends meet. But then The Godfather becomes a big hit, and you know, he works with Coppola to bring the script to life, and he works with him on the second one, and he becomes a very wealthy man on the back of it. However, he had a terrible gambling addiction, and it was almost rags to riches to rags again, almost. He could barely keep his head above water. And the story about that actual process and what he went through whilst writing the second Godfather screenplay is really, really good. It's a fascinating read, and if you like those movies, I think you'll enjoy that sort of bit of history around the writing of that book. Now, I absolutely love the Beatles, and all their movies got movie adaptations, and with the exception of Let It Be, which did have a tie-in book, but it was just a book of photographs which came with the album rather than a tie-in novel per se, because it wasn't really that sort of a film. But for A Hard Day's Night, which was the Beatles' first movie, it was much more of the time. It was the early 1960s, I think 1963, 64, around that sort of period, and the Beatles were massive celebrities by then, and the movie plays up a bit of that celebrity with them being chased by the girls and just trying to get away and going in disguise to try and have an ordinary life. It's a good fun book. It's written by John Burt, who was the master of the movie tie-in, wasn't he? He wrote absolutely loads of books. Basically, he was a jobbing writer, a jobbing author, and wrote an awful lot of books. But this is the Pan tie-in, that's the British one there, and then this is the American tie-in edition, which is published by Dell. Now this Pan edition, 1964, yeah. So John Burke wrote it, but Alan Owen wrote the original screenplay. Now, another reason why I particularly like this one is because I do actually own John Burke's original contract from Pan Books to write these. So this was the original one here. So this is the contract between John Burke and Pan Books from 1964 to write, it doesn't actually say the Beatles there, just first part and second part, based on the Alan Owen film script The Beatles, but it is obviously for A Hard Day's Night. And it's just a typical sort of contract, and at the bottom it's signed by Clarence Paget. Now you might recognise that name, Clarence Paget. He was one of the editors at Pan, and he went on, once Herbert Van Thal had passed, to edit the last few issues of the Pan Book of Horror Stories. And then this is another one. This is a later contract from 1977. It was reprinted, and it's contract for the reprint of A Hard Day's Night. I'm not sure who that's signed by. It's signed by John Burke, and I'm not sure who the other signature is, but quite a nice little pair of that, and something quite unique. There would only have ever been one contract for A Hard Day's Night, and that's what they are. Now, I do love the Beatles, and this one I've sneaked in really because, once again, it's a fantastic, fantastic movie tie-in, and that's to Yellow Submarine, the animated one. Now, this is the British and American editions of Yellow Submarine. They've got different covers, but they're pretty much identical inside. And if you remember that great animated film, just have a look at this inside. It is just the business. It's the most gorgeous book. It's almost got the script word for word with, images from the movie. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's quite expensive to find in really nice condition, this one now. This is the American first. I said New American Library, 1968. And in Britain, it was published by New English Library. It's an early Nell, so 4 square in effect. Slightly different inside, so you want... Completists will want to get both editions, as I have. August 68. I think they're both absolutely knockout. I love them a lot, and easily part of my favourite movie tie-in collection. They're just great, and well, that's what movie tie-in books used to be like. Now I've just got one more in this first look at my favourite movie tie-ins, and this is this one. So this is the UK Tandem edition, and it's the tie-in to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And this is obviously the movie tie-in, and it is great. It's got a unique cover. The American one's different. I don't have any of the American spaghetti western ones, but this is just one of my favourites. I've had it for years. I used to just have it on display because I love the movie so much, and it's not a bad little adaptation either. I think, if anything, it's a bit short. It could have easily been twice the length. First print in there, 1967, and an absolutely gorgeous movie tie, one of my favourites to one of my favourite films. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that first look through these 10 or so movie adaptations and movie tie-ins. They're just fantastic. Now, I could easily have done 100, but I am going to pull just one more batch of 10 more next month, and we'll see 10 more absolute bangers that I think are fantastic. It's a great genre to collect. I love collecting movie tie-ins and TV tie-ins for that matter, and I've collected both ever since I've been collecting paperbacks, and those were just a few of my favourites. So look out for part 2 next month. So there you go. If you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it that thumbs up. Do please hit the subscribe button if you've not already for regular vintage paperback content, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.